So if you look at the ashes of San Aurelio, right, after the raid, federal agents are in there, and they're cataloging dozens of bodies, hundreds of weapons, and basically just the charred remains of this whole utopian dream.
Right.
And when the smoke finally cleared over this isolated, off-grid stretch of Florida swamp, the state had this overwhelming amount of physical evidence. I mean, they spent days cordoning off the ruins, just sifting through the debris of this libertarian homesteading community that, as we know, ended in a catastrophic, highly publicized standoff.
Yeah, a massive standoff.
But the most important thing they found, or I guess what they didn't find, was what was missing. A man who supposedly didn't exist on paper, who predicted the exact manner of their destruction, and who just, poof, vanished when the shooting started.
Exactly. And, the media painted the entire event as this local tax dispute that just tragically escalated, like a clash between sovereign citizens and county code enforcement.
Right, that was the mainstream narrative.
Yeah, but the textual record, particularly the investigative account we're using today, simply titled San Aurelio, it points to something far more systemic. And honestly, examining the rise and fall of this community requires putting a massive magnifying glass over that missing man.
The man from nowhere.
Right. His name, or at least the name he gave, was Jack Doyle. And understanding him is basically the skeleton key to understanding the entire friction between San Aurelio and the massive institutional power that crushed it.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking directly at you, the listener, and we're bringing you right into the ideological engine room of this story. Because we're not doing a broad chronological history of the town today. Our mission is entirely focused on Jack Doyle.
Just Jack.
Just Jack. We are pulling directly from the investigative account to figure out how this guy operated. Because, he is the guy you cross the street to avoid.
Oh, absolutely.
He's that guy who interrupts a perfectly normal conversation at, hardware store to deliver a completely unhinged monologue about the collapse of the global banking system.
Yeah, the classic tinfoil hat guy.
Exactly. And you just want to dismiss him. But reading his actual words in this text, you are left with this nagging, irritating question. What if he was the only one who actually understood the mechanics of what was coming?
Well, we possess this natural defense mechanism against information overload, right? When someone's tone violates our social norms, when they're yelling or aggressive or totally devoid of polite conversational filters.
Which Jack definitely was.
Oh, entirely. But when that happens, we automatically categorize the information itself as invalid. We just dismiss the messenger and the message simultaneously.
Right.
But the author of San Aurelio forces the reader to separate the two. When you strip away Jack Doyle's aggressive packaging, the actual data he presented was often grounded in undeniable reality. And that cognitive dissonance, that's the core of Jack's character.
It really is. And before we look at what he believed, we really have to look at how he arrived. The text literally refers to Jack as a ghost.
A literal ghost in the system.
Yeah, and in a highly digitized modern world, that is almost impossible to pull off by accident. Prior to his appearance in the orbit of San Aurelio's founders, there is zero verifiable background. The author notes the complete absence of tax returns, no steady job history.
Nothing.
No property deeds, no utility bills, no digital footprint. There's an educated guess from some of the surviving community members that he might have been a long-haul trucker.
Right, that was a running theory.
Somebody who spent decades on the asphalt devouring fringe audiobooks, but ultimately he did not exist in any federal or state database.
And we have to realize dropping off the grid in the 2020s requires an immense, sustained, exhausting effort. You can't just lose your phone and disappear.
You leave a trail no matter what.
Exactly. You have to actively avoid facial recognition. You have to navigate a cashless society using barter or precious metals. And you have to intentionally sever every single administrative tie to the state.
Which means he did this on purpose?
Yes. It suggests a man who decided to secede from the system long before the concept of San Aurelio was ever born. He didn't need the community to teach him how to vanish. He was already gone.
Which makes his sudden, abrupt insertion into the story just so cinematic. You have the core founders of the San Aurelio project, Sarah and Ethan, and they are at a local outdoor gun range.
Right, the Miami tech couple.
Yeah, totally city people, software developers, project managers, and they're trying to learn the basic survival skills they think they'll need for this off-grid life. So Sarah is practicing with a handgun, and the slide keeps jamming. She's getting stressed. She's overcorrecting, basically fighting the machine.
Our next starts setting in.
Right. And suddenly, from a few lanes down, this scruffy, intense guy in stained work clothes just walks over. He doesn't ask permission. He just reaches out, clears the jam with a flick of his wrist, hands the weapon back, and tells her, don't grip it like a crowbar. Let it work.
It's such a striking introduction because it immediately establishes his practical competence. I mean, he understands the mechanics of the firearm way better than they do.
Yeah.
But more importantly, he understands how human panic interferes with mechanical function.
Ah.
Yeah, he diagnoses her anxiety just as much as he diagnoses the jam slide.
Wow, yeah. But the thing is, he doesn't stop there. He doesn't just nod and walk back to his lane. He looks at their gear, pegs them instantly as novice preppers, and pivots from giving shooting advice to giving a full-blown financial lecture.
Classic Jack.
Just totally unprompted. Without skipping a beat, he starts lecturing them about the 1933 gold revaluation. He tells them the government is going to confiscate wealth again, just like FDR did, but this time it will be entirely digital.
Right.
He literally says, when it happens, you'll wish you had more than just bullets and canned beans. And that is his opening line to the people who will eventually build San Aurelio.
It's incredible.
And from then on, he just hovers on the periphery of their group, quietly drinking at the local bar, the Red Dog, until they finally invite him out to the property.
We really need to pause and examine the substance of that initial rant at the gun range, because it perfectly encapsulates Jack's method. I mean, the 1933 gold revaluation isn't a conspiracy theory. It is a historical fact.
Right.
Under Executive Order 6102, Franklin D. Roosevelt didn't just, politely ask citizens to turn in their gold. He made it a criminal offense to hoard monetary gold, forcing citizens to surrender it to the Federal Reserve at a suppressed, artificially low rate.
Yeah, it was wild.
It was a massive, mandated wealth transfer to stabilize the banking system during the Depression.
I have to interject, though, because, yes, FDR did that, but he had physical men in suits, like federal agents actually going into safe deposit boxes. It was a highly physical analog process.
Right.
So Jack is taking that 1930s reality and applying it to a modern context. How does he justify the leap from physical confiscation to whatever he thinks is happening today?
Well, he justifies it through the architecture of digital finance. Jack's argument is that the modern equivalent of EO 6102 isn't a guy in a fedora knocking on your door to take your gold coins. It is a central bank digital currency, or CBDC.
Ah, okay.
He argued that the infrastructure is currently being laid for a fully trackable, programmable, cashless society. And in that system, the government doesn't need to physically confiscate anything. They simply flip a switch to freeze your digital wallet, or program your money so it can only be spent on approved items within a certain geographic radius.
Oh, wow. So he looked at Sarah and Ethan's bullets and beans and realized they were preparing for a localized physical disaster.
Exactly. While he was preparing for a systemic digital cage.
That is just, it's so bleak. But here is the bizarre contradiction of Jack Doyle. He is the guy yelling about digital cages and historical wealth confiscation at a bar. You'd think the group would just ignore him, right?
You'd think so, yeah.
But once they actually secure the land for San Aurelio and start the brutal physical work of building a town from scratch, Jack is the hardest worker on the property.
Unbelievably hard worker.
The text points out that he was the first guy on the ladder in the morning and the last guy off the site at night. One day he is mixing concrete by hand. The next afternoon he is intricately rewiring an old rusted water pump.
Right, and the city folks have no idea where he learned all this.
None at all. When they ask, he just gives this cryptic response. I like to learn things. One day it turns out to be useful.
It's because his labor is his currency. It is literally the only reason the community tolerates his abrasive personality. I mean, if he were just a man shouting from a soapbox, they would have ostracized him immediately.
Oh, for sure.
But because he is the one physically building the walls of their sanctuary, they have to accept his presence. His competence forces them to listen. It's a purely transactional relationship. He gives them his backbreaking labor, and they give him an audience.
See, I don't buy the true believer angle entirely. I really have to push back on this.
Okay, let's hear it.
If Jack truly believes society was on the precipice of a totalitarian collapse, why constantly antagonize the very people who had the power to arrest him today? It feels performative.
Interesting.
Like, is Jack a grifter who just found a captive audience of naive tech millionaires? Or is he like a doomsday prepper who secretly hopes for the apocalypse? You know, the guy, he builds the bunker, he hoards the supplies, and deep down, he wants the missiles to fly just so he can open his blast doors and scream, I told you so. Like, Does Jack actually want this off-grid experiment to succeed, or does he just want a front row seat to the collapse he keeps predicting?
Well, that tension is explicitly acknowledged in the text by Ethan. In the aftermath interviews, Ethan reflects a lot on Jack's motivations.
Hmm.
And he notes that Jack never asked for money. He never asked for a leadership title. He traded his highly skilled labor for nothing more than, like, a jar of honey or a bundle of sweet potatoes.
That's true.
A grifter seeks leverage or capital or authority. Jack sought none of those. He possessed this stubborn, almost pathological need for his worldview to be recognized.
Disrecognized.
Right. Ethan said, "In a world full of liars, a stubborn man can be worth more than a clever one." Jack wasn't performing for money. He was trying to violently shake these people awake to a reality he believed was already here.
Well, his methods of shaking people awake were definitely legendary and ultimately disastrous. Let's look at the actual content of the rants that made him so infamous around the county. Because he didn't just lecture the homesteaders.
No, not at all.
His favorite targets were the local government officials. Whenever the county clerks or the building inspectors rolled down the dirt roads in their white SUVs with their little clipboards, checking for unpermitted structures or septic tank compliance, Jack would absolutely unleash on them.
He was relentless.
He'd scream about the World Economic Forum, the WEF. He'd yell about Klaus Schwab famously shouting down from a roof truss, "Tell your boss we're not eating Z-bugs."
Yeah.
He'd rant about C40 climate policies and International Monetary Fund taxation reports to local building inspectors.
Right. And this is where the investigative account requires the reader to maintain strict objectivity, because the author points out a highly uncomfortable truth. Jack was not inventing these organizations.
No, they're completely real.
The WEF,
Yeah.
the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, the IMF, these are highly influential, publicly facing entities. They hold summits, they publish extensive white papers, and they draft specific policy recommendations for global governance, wealth distribution, and environmental compliance.
Exactly. Like when you actually look at the C40 policies he was screaming about, what exactly are they?
Well, C40 is a network of global mayors collaborating on climate action. And in their published research regarding consumption interventions to meet climate targets by 2030, they explore these ambitious hypothetical targets,
Such as?
including zero meat consumption, zero dairy consumption, and zero private vehicle ownership. Now, it's important to note, these are framed by the organization as analytical reports to reduce urban emissions. They are not binding mandates.
Right. Right. And Jack reads a 400-page bureaucratic PDF about ambitious dietary intervention targets for urban centers and immediately strips away the polite diplomatic language. He basically translates it.
Yes.
I like to think of it as the terms of service analogy.
Oh, let's hear this.
Imagine you are downloading a new app, right? And you get hit with a 50-page terms of service agreement. The legal jargon is incredibly dense. User grants irrevocable license to utilize device metadata for third-party synergy and localized algorithmic behavioral prediction.
Sounds standard.
Exactly. Your eyes glaze over and you hit accept. But now imagine you hire Jack Doyle to read it for you.
Oh, boy.
He scans the document, looks you dead in the eye, and screams, "They are going to track your children and sell your psychological profile to the highest bidder."
That is so accurate.
I mean, technically he is extrapolating the worst-case mechanical application of a real clause. But his delivery makes him look completely unhinged. You dismiss him as crazy, and you just sign the paper anyway.
That analogy gets right to the heart of the sociological divide. The book highlights. Why is Jack considered a dangerous fringe lunatic, while a policy analyst presenting the exact same data at a conference is considered a respected expert?
Right, it's the delivery.
It's the boundary determined entirely by class markers, vocabulary, and tone. The county building inspector measuring the setback line of a porch views himself as just a local guy doing a municipal job.
He just wants to check the septic tank and go home.
Exactly. But Jack views that same inspector as the tip of the spear. To Jack, the clerk is a local enforcer for a vast, supranational hierarchy attempting to regulate human independence out of existence.
But because of that aggressive tone, the county clerks didn't hear a nuanced critique of global policy. They didn't hear an argument about the overreach of the C40 climate goals. They just heard a guy in muddy boots threatening them.
Right.
Jack picked a fight with the smallest, most localized gear of a massive machine, completely ignoring the fact that the machine can and will crush you for jamming its gears.
He lacked any strategic restraint whatsoever. But his lack of restraint wasn't just, like, mindless anger. It was rooted in a massive, overarching theory of human history.
Yeah.
He didn't just obsess over modern policy documents. He grounded his defiance in a mathematical timeline of civilizational collapse.
The 1655-year doomsday clock.
Yes.
Reading this section of the book was staggering. I mean, Jack didn't just think the government was bad. He believed human civilizations operate on a strict, unavoidable mathematical cycle of growth, overcomplexity, and total collapse.
It was almost a religion to him.
He maps it out for the founders on a napkin at the Red Dog Bar. He starts with the Bronze Age collapse. Historians generally pin the systemic collapse of the Mediterranean Bronze Age civilizations around 1180 BC.
Right.
Jack says, okay, add 655 years to that date. Where does it land? 475 AD.
The fall of the Western Roman Empire.
Exactly. Then he smiles and says, add another 655 years. That brings us to roughly 2130 AD. He claimed our current global society is in the late decline phase.
Now, dates can be cherry-picked to fit almost any narrative, right?
Oh, for sure. You can make the math do whatever you want.
Exactly. What makes Jack's theory compelling, and what captivated the founders of San Aurelio, was the socioeconomic reasoning he used to justify the math. He didn't attribute these collapses to mystical forces or anything like that. He attributed them to the mechanics of complexity.
Complexity.
Yes. He argued that as societies grow, they demand hyper-specialization.
Right. He called them city boys. He pointed out that the tech developers who moved to San Aurelio had to relearn basic human survival. In the city, you don't need to know how to purify water or grow a tomato or wire a circuit. You just swipe a card.
You pay someone else to do it.
Yeah, your entire professional existence might be dedicated to optimizing a single search engine algorithm or, managing the logistics for a specific type of imported plastic.
And that specialization generates incredible technological leaps. It allows a society to build skyscrapers and smartphones.
Yeah.
But, Jack argued, it causes the individual to lose general resilience.
Right.
The society becomes a highly complex, interconnected web of hyper-specialized nodes.
I kept trying to find a way to visualize this while I was reading, and the best analogy isn't architecture, it's agriculture.
Oh.
It's like agricultural monoculture. Look at the Cavendish banana.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
Right. We have bred modern society like the Cavendish banana. It is highly optimized, it produces an incredible yield, and it ships perfectly. But because every single plant is a genetic clone of the others, it possesses zero genetic diversity.
Right, it's completely vulnerable.
Exactly. A single specific fungus-like tropical race 4 can wipe out the entire global supply overnight because the system lacks the varied resilience to fight it off. Jack is arguing that human hyperspecialization is our societal monoculture.
That is a phenomenal way to understand his point.
Okay.
Because the system is so specialized, it is highly vulnerable to a black swan event, an unpredictable, high-impact crisis.
Like the Bronze Age.
Exactly. When you look back at the Bronze Age collapse, it wasn't just one thing. It was a failure of the highly specialized trade routes.
Yeah.
You needed copper from Cyprus and tin from Afghanistan to make bronze.
Right.
When the Sea Peoples disrupted those specific maritime logistics, the entire military and agricultural infrastructure of multiple empires collapsed simultaneously. Jack argued that modern just-in-time shipping logistics and our reliance on concentrated semiconductor manufacturing make us exactly like the late Bronze Age, just with faster Wi-Fi.
Wow. And Jack takes it a step further into political theory. He argues that in these late-stage societies, a welfare state inevitably develops. The text quotes him using highly charged language about social parasites who emerge to support a bloated elite class.
The very inflammatory language.
Very. And he posits that when the decline begins to show, when the supply chains wobble or the economy fractures, the supranational organizations step in. The elites try to fix the wobble through massive top-down regulations.
But that backfires.
Right. According to Jack, these interventions only create a feedback loop that accelerates the end. The system becomes so rigid and inefficient that it shatters, usually finalized by what he calls a foreign invasion, referencing the Germanic tribes crossing the Rhine or the Sea Peoples ravaging the Mediterranean.
Which totally reframes the entire purpose of San Aurelio.
Yeah.
Was this community simply a collection of libertarians trying to dodge property taxes? Or was it an attempt to beat Jack's clock?
Oh, interesting.
By forcing these software developers to become jacks of all trades, by teaching them how to shoot, farm, and operate on a silver coin barter economy, they were attempting to cure the monoculture. They were trying to build a resilient ark for the year 2130.
But that ark never made it to the water.
No, it didn't.
And it didn't make it, ironically, because of the man who designed the blueprints. This brings us to Jack's narrative and literary function within the story. Jack explicitly adopted the Cassandra complex.
Yes, cursed to foresee the fire, but doomed to be mocked by the very people he's trying to save.
As a literary device in this investigative account, Jack operates as this paradoxical plot mechanism. He is the ideological driver of the community, the jester who speaks uncomfortable truths, and ultimately the direct catalyst for their absolute destruction.
And it revolves entirely around his inability to control his antagonism.
Let's trace the actual mechanics of how this happened, because reading it is just agonizing. The inciting incident isn't a federal investigation. It starts as a localized property tax dispute.
Right. Super mundane.
The county inspectors show up to harass San Aurelio over unpaid back taxes on some abandoned parcels of land they had absorbed. The inspectors offer an arrangement, basically a localized, corrupt bribe to make the paperwork go away.
Standard local corruption.
Right. And Jack loses his mind. He screams at them, but he doesn't just yell about globalist agendas this time. He screams, "We're not funding your wet dream. We have reserves. We have gold."
He attempts to weaponize the language of hard assets to intimidate the bureaucrats. He wants them to know that San Aurelio cannot be starved out or bought off.
But he fundamentally misunderstands how the state apparatus functions.
Completely.
The clerks go back to town. They don't report a political protest. They talk over coffee at the local diner. They say, "Those crazy people out in the swamp say they have a vault full of gold."
And there it is.
That specific phrase, the gold vault rumor, escapes the diner. It hits local AM radio, then regional newspapers, and finally the late-night cable news networks. Suddenly, San Aurelio isn't a bunch of quirky homesteaders.
They are heavily armed, sovereign citizens sitting on a multi-million-dollar dragon's hoard of untraceable bullion.
And that rumor provides the exact legal mechanism required to crush them. The state doesn't need to debate Jack's theories on the World Economic Forum. They just utilize the mechanics of civil asset forfeiture and federal tax law.
It's brutally simple.
State and federal agencies, the IRS, the ATF, use the specter of vast, untaxed wealth and the firearms supposedly guarding it to justify probable cause. They don't need a conviction. They just need a reasonable suspicion that illegal assets are being hoarded to secure a warrant for a massive tactical deployment.
It is the ultimate tragic irony. I mean, Jack was desperately trying to warn his friends about the crushing, overwhelming power of the state, but his very warnings, his complete refusal to use a polite filter, handed the state the exact legal ammunition it needed to raid them.
I kept asking myself while reading, was Jack a weatherman accurately predicting a devastating storm, or was he performing a violent rain dance that actually summoned the flood?
Well, Marcus, the tech genius of the group, captures this perfectly in his recovered journals. He writes that Jack, quote, carried a weight, like he needed to be wrong but didn't believe he was.
That's a heavy quote.
It really is. On a deeply subconscious level, Jack's entire identity was so wrapped up in being the outcast prophet of doom that he needed the confrontation to validate his worldview. If the federal government ignored San Aurelio and just let them grow tomatoes in peace, Jack's grand theory of the tyrannical, overarching state falls apart.
He'd just be a guy on a farm.
Exactly. The state had to attack them for Jack to be proven right.
There is this incredibly haunting image early in the book. They're walking through the ruins of the abandoned town before they even start building. Jack kicks an old rusted cash register lying in the dirt, and he turns to the group and says, "See? This is what collapse looks like. One day, it's just closed for maintenance. Next day, it's vines through the roof." He is standing there, admiring the ruins of a past collapse, completely unaware that his actions are actively summoning the forces that will reduce his own project to ash.
He transitioned from predicting history to accelerating it.
Yeah.
Which, makes the climax of his story all the more mysterious, because when the prophecy is fulfilled, when the federal tactical teams breach the perimeter, when the post office catches fire and dozens of his friends are killed, Jack is nowhere to be found.
The Vanishing Act. Let's look at the post-raid reality, because this is where Jack transitions from a historical figure into pure myth.
Right.
The raid happens. It is an absolute massacre. Gabo, the Cuban exile who just wanted to be left alone to farm, is shot dead in the tree line. Daniel, the community's preacher, dies when the communal hall goes up in flames. Ethan and Sarah are dragged out of the mud in cuffs, beaten and broken.
It's horrific.
And the federal agencies spend weeks sifting through the ashes of the town. They catalog every bone fragment, every melted rifle receiver. But they never find Jack Doyle. No body, no trace, no witness to his death, and no witness to his escape. He simply vanishes into the swamp smoke.
And because of that absence, a narrative vacuum opens up. and it is immediately filled by two competing legends.
Let's hear them.
Well, to the federal prosecution, the media, and his detractors, Jack's disappearance is the ultimate proof of his cowardice. They paint him as this shadowy, manipulative ringleader, a grifter who agitated a peaceful community into a violent, paranoid standoff with the government, and then, the moment the first flashbang went off, slipped out the back door and left his friends to burn.
But then you have the fringe forums, the survivalist blogs. To them, Jack is a folk hero.
Exactly.
He is a ghost who successfully slipped the almighty grasp of the surveillance state. There are rumors that he made it to South America, that he's living off the grid in Patagonia, or that he's quietly organizing the next San Aurelio somewhere else under a new name.
And the logistics of that survival are staggering to contemplate. I mean, how does a man with no verified identity survive on the run in the late 2020s?
If everything he said was right.
Right. If his own theories about digital tracking, facial recognition at border crossings, and the cashless society were right, how is he moving? How is he eating?
It implies that his paranoia drove him to prepare an escape route so flawlessly: analog burner phones, buried caches of physical silver, forged paper documents, that the digital dragnet simply couldn't catch him.
The book describes this chilling scene at the trial of the survivors.
Yeah.
Ethan, Sarah, and Marcus are sitting at the defense table. They're in shackles. They look exhausted, traumatized, their lives completely destroyed.
Yeah.
The judge is reading the federal charges: felony murder, conspiracy, material support to an unlawful paramilitary organization.
Yeah.
And then the clerk reads the warrant for Jack Doyle. He's being tried in absentia. The words "fugitive from justice" echo in the courtroom. But the warrant is read into empty air. He isn't there. It is just a name on a piece of paper floating in the sterile air of a federal courthouse.
From a narrative perspective, Jack's physical absence perfectly completes his literary archetype. I mean, think about the alternatives.
What do you mean?
If he had been killed in the raid, he would have become a martyr, but a human one, with a grave and a final chapter.
Right.
If he had been captured and put on the stand, the prosecution would have picked apart his theories, subjected him to psychological evaluations, humiliated him, and reduced him to a common mortal criminal.
Oh, absolutely. They would have destroyed his mystique.
But by vanishing, he transcends mortality. He becomes a myth. He ensures that the legend of San Aurelio never truly dies, because the central architect of its ideology remains unresolved, lingering just out of sight.
We have covered so much ground today. We've gone from a jammed handgun at a shooting range to the mechanics of international climate policies, to the collapse of the Roman Empire, to the legal mechanics of a fiery federal raid.
It's been a ride. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is our final evaluation of Jack Doyle?
Within the context of the text, Jack is the essential catalyst. He is the spark in the powder keg. But as a person, he represents the extreme logical conclusion of the community's fears. He was a man who saw the fragility of the macro world so clearly, with such piercing historical accuracy, that the glare of that grand vision blinded him.
He was too focused on the big picture.
Yes. He became completely blind to the immediate, tangible danger he was dragging right to his own front door. He was so busy looking at the horizon for the fall of the empire in the year 2130 that he didn't see the tactical beams creeping through his own swamp in the present day.
It is a profound tragedy of hubris and paranoia. And it leaves us, you, the listener, with a lot to reflect on regarding how we consume information. We live in an era of unprecedented information overload where crazy theories are thrown at us every single day.
Constant noise.
When someone sounds unhinged, when their tone is aggressive or lacks polite filters, do you dismiss them entirely? Or do you possess the critical patience to look for the grain of truth, the actual policy document, the historical precedent buried under their jargon? San Aurelio dismissed Jack's tone but embraced his skills, and their inability to manage his antagonism cost them everything.
It requires a relentless application of critical thinking. We must be able to separate the messenger from the message, analyzing the data without allowing the messenger's paranoia to infect our own judgment or dictate our actions.
I want to leave you with one final, lingering question to mull over, a thought that builds on everything we've discussed today. Let's say just for a moment as a thought experiment that Jack Doyle's 1655-year timeline is mathematically correct. The Bronze Age fell, Rome fell, and the next cycle of civilizational collapse hits in 2130. That means we have about 100 years left before the monoculture fails and the Jenga tower comes down. You are sitting in your car right now, or walking your dog, or making dinner, listening to this on a supercomputer in your pocket, supported by a miraculously complex global grid of satellites, underwater cables, and specialized
A
logistics.
very fragile grid.
Exactly. If that grid goes down tomorrow, what skills do you actually possess? Are you a highly specialized city boy? Or can you fix the pump? Because next time you're at a gathering and that uncomfortable guy corners you to tell you the end is near, you might just want to ask him how to grow a tomato.